Welcome, dear listeners, to the Speak and Flow podcast, where we share unique experiences to help you unleash your leadership voice. Today, we have Dana Zellers, executive coach. She is known to help you crush it from being crushed, or it's crush it from being crushed.
Yeah, go from being crushed to crushing it.
Yes, go from being crushed to crush it. That's right. I love that. I love that. It's so true because when we're doing so much, we often feel like, oh my goodness, like the world is crushing in, caving in on us, and we want to avoid that. And so I have you here today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us on how do we do this? Tell us more about that, like going into that, where your leaders, when people come to you, what are they feeling?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think mostly when leaders come to me, they are feeling overwhelmed. They are feeling all of this pressure. They really want to be successful at work. And historically, that has meant more and more and more hours and more tasks and more things. And they usually come to me when they're getting to the point where they're realizing that their personal life is suffering. Their family is getting frustrated with them always being unavailable or having the phone out at every conversation. Maybe their health is starting to fail. Maybe they're just looking at, what am I doing from now until I retire? Like, is this what it looks like? Or is there a way that I can get back to a better work-life balance?
So if you're having any of those, if your relationships are suffering, your health, and what's interesting about health is I think a lot of us have been very accustomed to actually suppressing some of our health signs and symptoms and signals, which, if you're one of those, like really dig deep, like, is my health suffering?
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things where if we can preempt some of those things and not wait until our health is hospitalizing us or something dramatic, it's like all of those things. If I can start taking those steps now to start taking care of myself, not only am I going to feel better and I'm going to be happier, but I'm actually going to be more successful in the work stuff. All of this stuff that's taking me away from it. We don't realize that more is actually getting less effective, and it's taking away from our personal well-being.
Right. Yeah. Because like you said, in the past, and still present, it feels like, okay, the more we do, the more successful we're going to be. And you're here to say, no, that's not true.
That is not true. We really have to kind of flip that reframe. And it's so hard for us because sometimes it's other people asking us to do more and more, but oftentimes it's things that we want to do or we feel like would benefit us in some way. And one of the key pieces, the first step that I work with on all my clients is really getting clarity of focus. Right. So what is important to you? Truly, when you step back, all these things that you're just reacting to and responding to during a day, are those taking you where you want to go?
Right.
And so as soon as we start getting that clarity, suddenly our schedule opens up. And
is it hard for people though? Is it hard to actually say, hey, this is what is really important, or do you find that easy for people?
What I find is that truly taking the time. And so I take people through exercises, we do some values, we do some visioning, we do some reflection, all of those things, looking at those gaps. The more people go through that process and take the time to really reflect on it, it's like a light bulb goes off. And you're like, okay, when I look at how I'm spending my time, I'm actually not driving towards these things that I say are the most important to me.
Right. Because it feels like they all are important. And it feels like if I eliminate them, I'm being lazy. Or like I can see myself if I'm going through this exercise, oh my gosh, if I eliminate that, I'm being lazy. Or if I eliminate this, it's going to take me too long to get to my goal.
Yeah. But the challenge is when we do that, I was totally that person who was like the last person in the office. I was working late on projects. I was doing all of that. And the problem with that is that we're not effective with our time when we're doing that. So if we can just choose the key things, like we talk about the Pareto principle, so that the 80-20 rule, that typically if 20% of what you're doing is leading to 80% of the results, then you want to focus on just that 20%. And the rest of the 80% of the things that you're doing actually might be benefiting you some, but not in enough ratio of the amount of time that you're spending on it.
Wow.
And so if we're focusing on those few things that are moving the needle most and getting us where we want to go, and again, a lot of people come to me individually. So they're like, okay, well, personally, this is what I want to do. But what about my company? Like, they want me to be doing all of these things. But I think that same theory translates to your professional life. So look at what is really important to your company. Look at what's really important to your boss and your team. And so how does what you're doing fit into that? And what are the pieces that truly are going to give you the most bang for the buck?
Right. And
As
so,
opposed to walking into your week and just reacting to emails and tasks
right.
and things like that, which is what we normally do.
Which is not what we normally do. So taking the time to reflect and say, hey, get really crystal clear about what is important to you, what is important to the company.
Yeah,
Because if they really value you and value the quality of what we're trying to do and the results, then they will. I mean, do you see people communicating that, having challenges around communicating that, and with me, the boss?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are kind of three pieces to the work that I do with my clients. So one is that first piece, it's that focus, it's that clarity. What is really important to me? What am I paying attention to? One is kind of in the productivity area. So we want to be more efficient with our time. We want to be not only doing the right things, but we want to be doing them in the right way. The third piece is relationships.
Mhm.
So when we go about our day, if we're not effective in the way that we're communicating to the
Mhm.
people around us,
Mhm.
if we are walking in and sort of being like, ugh, that person is asking me for this again, and,
Right.
sort of those things. But once we start to really focus on relationships and give people the benefit of the doubt and start to get really curious as to what they are looking for, we can start to open up a relationship where we're also able to really honestly communicate what it is that we're looking to do. Like, how do we all figure this out, as opposed to me over in this corner by myself,
Mhm.
banging my head against the wall and trying to do these things. By opening up those relationships, that's really the only way you're going to continue to be successful.
That's interesting because I worked with some leaders before, and the perception is like, I'm thinking about some leaders and they have clients within the organization,
Yeah.
and some of these clients have a good reputation. If you do things for them, it can really build you up. But then some of the things that they ask you to do may not be directly aligned to your own skill development, or what you, like you said, the clarity, the focus. Like, how would one address that or handle that, do you think?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I do think, we need to be cognizant about what relationships do for us. So by
Yeah.
having, and again, this isn't like in a yucky, like I'm gonna focus on this person because they can do something for me. It's in a real state of sort of giving and sharing of those things. And I think the key with those instances is evaluating, okay, so how does this fit into what's the most important for me to do?
Mhm.
And what is the reason why I'd be doing those things? Sometimes relationship building
Mhm.
is enough for it to become important to you. You're like, okay, this isn't in my wheelhouse. This isn't my skill set. Like, I'm not jazzed about this, but this is a piece that's going to get me where I want to go.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not. And
Right.
so again, we need to evaluate those things and say, okay, based on this relationship, this is one of the pieces that it just isn't a great fit for me. And the more you can open that dialogue, I think the problem that most people have is that they receive information and that's the end of the communication. Whereas if you start having a conversation and you ask questions about, why is this important to you? What is the scope of this? Who are all the other players? Is there somebody who might be a better fit for this? All of these things, you can have a conversation where, it's not they tell me the information and I do it or I say no. It's how do we open it up and figure out the best solution that's
Mhm.
really going to be a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. And it's hard because, especially if you're just like you walking in unprepared too, and then you go in, especially if it's a client or like an authority figure, you're just going in and then you have nothing else to say. You're just taking it. You're like, okay, here, I've just accepted this task that I don't want to do, or project. So being prepared first with the right questions, like you said.
Totally.
Very
And
important.
particularly when you're dealing, a lot of people that I'm talking to are dealing with their managers, and it's really making sure that you're having a real open, regular conversation with them. So
Right.
whether it's a client or some of those people, it's like with your manager, they're going to be a little more concerned about, here are all the things on my plate.
Yeah.
Here are all of the pieces that I understand are important.
Mhm.
Based on those, can we all get on the same page as to which are the most important and what we do with the things that are beyond the scope of what can be done in this week or whatever.
Right.
And so again, having that be really an open conversation where you're sharing that and you're all kind of deciding what the best focus is together, as opposed to it just being a one-way street.
Right.
Obviously, if it's more a client relationship, we want, to make sure that we're perceived well, that all of these things are delivered. And there's a way to do that so that, again, you're understanding the scope of what a win for all of us is in the reality of everybody's bandwidth and circumstances.
Mhm. I love this. I mean, I was just watching a reel yesterday. This is more about entrepreneurship, but it's the same concept about if you want to be a millionaire, I think people will tend to do a lot,
Yeah.
but it says if you want to be a millionaire, you narrow in your focus. You get really, really good at that one thing.
Yeah.
And then that's how you make your millions. And then you take that money and then you add to it, you expand to it. But is it
Mhm.
a similar concept that what you teach?
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, if we do everything sort of, a little
Right.
bit, then again, there is a benefit to being a generalist and doing, more things. But
Mhm.
again, within those, making sure that I can really excel at this. I mean, I think that, when we decide all of the things that we want to do with our time, it's like, okay, why is this important to me during this time? Why is this important in my job? And so then we decide how much time is that worth to me
Mhm.
to do that. And so in making those decisions, again, it's like I'm going to be great at these few things that I'm doing. I'm not going to be one of those people who says I will make that deadline and misses it.
Mhm.
I'm not going to be one of those people who doesn't have time to proof my work and go through all of those things. It's like all of those little things that if we get really scattered, the great impression we're trying to make is just lost.
Oh
And
my,
so if we focus on a few things and really make sure that we're leaving ourselves enough time, like knowing that emergencies are going to happen, knowing that things are going to come up, bake that into the plan so that we're saying yes to fewer things, which unfortunately does mean that we're saying no to other things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. And can you share an example of one of your clients, like of one of your best clients? Like what happened?
Yeah, so I had an amazing client comes to mind who was just so eager, all of these things, was an independent contributor
Uh-huh.
and really wanted to move into a managing leadership role.
Uh-huh.
Was ready for this. This was happening, and there were two challenges that they were really facing when we came together. One is too much work. So all of these things would come in, things would come up as an emergency. They were a go-to guy for some of senior leadership to figure things out. And so part of that was that conversation of how do we give ourselves enough time to be successful with the things that we want to do. So
Mhm.
we definitely did work in that area. But the other piece that was a huge piece of this was they were in data science. And
Mhm.
so they were very like, I ran the numbers. This is what we should do. It's very clear. And they
Mhm.
would share that information with other people and
Mhm.
they wouldn't do what they said. And they were
Okay.
just getting so frustrated.
Right.
And so we really worked on those relationships. So we turned it around as to you are not just bringing information to them that they go off into a black box. It's a
Mhm.
conversation. So how do we open up that conversation and really understand what they're trying to do, what the information is, how you can be helpful, and how we can come up with a solution that's going to get us there.
I
And
love.
it ended up really just transforming their relationship.
Mhm.
They were able to really understand kind of the nuance of
Mhm.
how the data fit into that, and
Mhm.
so much that there were pieces that they didn't know about it. And once
Mhm.
they got that information, they were able to share more information on their side. And again, it really created a team where they were able to be successful. And their manager saw this and saw
Yeah.
this transformation and moved them into a more senior role.
I love that. I mean, I especially love that. I keep on saying that, but I really do. And the reason why is because it's like, because I hear you saying that, okay, this is a person independent contributor. Are all of our, really high top performers out there who are independent contributors, you already got a lot going on. You're doing so much.
So much.
Dana can already help you. Dana can help you with just being productive with all the things that you're doing. But again, don't remember that there's a relationship piece around it. If you're really going to be a top leader, a leader of a manager, a team,
Yeah.
the relationships are where it's at, and it's about communication.
The relationships are absolutely where it's at. I mean, as successful as we can all be on our tasks,
Yeah.
what the perception of you is so much more
Yes.
important.
It's
It is
so
so much more
important.
important. And so if people again see you in a corner working on your stuff and doing a good
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
that'd be fine. You may move ahead to a degree, but without developing those relationships, without being able to share your wins with people
Right.
in the right way, no one's ever going to see you as that next leader to step into that role.
Totally. That was me. I mean, that's why people got promoted before me. So you're singing my song.
Yeah. I mean, I think we,
That's
we all do feel like the work that we're doing speaks for itself.
right. But
And
no,
unfortunately, it doesn't.
does it? That's what we think. And it doesn't. It doesn't. It's both also communicating that and telling
Yeah,
examples and experiences, the lesson learned and stepping up to do that.
exactly. Exactly.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. And so what are some of the things that how do people get a hold of you? Like what are some of the things that you're doing for clients?
Yeah. Well, one of the first things I give to my clients is what I like to call the Better Week Blueprint.
Uh-huh.
This is a template that I would offer to anybody who's available. It's at danazellers.com/betterweek.
Okay.
And what this is it's really a week planning system to be intentional about how we're spending our time in each week. And as we talked about, that reflection piece. So looking back and making sure that I'm learning from all of those experiences and moving forward. Again, it's the first tool that I give most of my clients. So I love to offer it so that anybody can really appreciate it. And again, I do work with a lot of clients one-on-one. And so if anybody is interested in talking about that further, I would love to have a chat.
Love that. And so what is that's such a valuable tool. I mean, I could see how that would really help me, but then I'd also see how it can need your help to support me through that.
Yeah, again, and it's one of those things. I think the process is really iterative. I think having that focus and knowing what's important to you is such a key piece, but then making sure that you're being intentional about creating that in your
Exactly.
day, your week, your month, your year.
Yeah.
Having those two pieces married together is so important.
And I could especially see how people could fall back into old patterns being comfortable,
Yeah.
especially if that's something you already know how to do. I mean, you're just
Yeah,
getting
we are not creatures who like change. Even if the situation that we're in isn't getting us where we want to go, getting out of that is so important. And I think having a partner can be a huge step. We can do a lot on our own, but we can get further, faster, in some place different than we even envision for ourselves with help of somebody else.
especially on the other side, especially when there's change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. And any last like leadership tips that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I would say the overall perspective that I have is we do want to invest a little time to saving ourselves so much time in the future. So
Mhm.
whether that's with somebody else or on your own, really thinking about what's important, really planning. People don't like planning. They hate it when I say plan, but really taking a little time and thinking about like, okay, if this is what a change that I want in my life, what do I need to do to get there? And
Right,
how do I invest some time to start making that change?
right, right. And the support to help us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is support all around us.
There's
So
support.
take advantage. Why wouldn't we?
Right. Oh, I love it. Thank you, Dana. That was powerful. I learned
Thank
so
you.
much, and I trust that the audience has also taken away lots of nuggets, lots of great advice and tip. So reach out to Dana. She is your support to take you to the next level, to move up in your career and your professional and overall life. So thanks again, Dana, for being
Thank
here.
you so much for having me. This was so
Right.
fun.
Until next time, take care. Thanks for joining the conversation today. Are you curious on how you measure up with your ability to speak in flow? Come grab my free self-assessment at https://speakinflow.com/assessment. And I'll see you on the other side.